It may well be the last Formula One race at this challenging and spectacular Suzuka circuit, but as ever, so much hangs on this penultimate round of the 2006 Formula One World Championship. Your commentators for the Japanese Grand Prix, Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome, everybody, to a beautifully sunny Suzuka circuit. And a very passionate crowd just getting in the mood, led by a very passionate cheerleader. What a wonderful atmosphere, as Martin was saying, down on the grid. A capacity crowd, 130,000 people packed into here for what's probably the last time for some time, the 20th anniversary then of the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. And as always, and has been often the case in the past, real drama attending us. You know, in any real quality sporting occasion, there are always shocks, and this season of Formula One has been no different. At the start of the year, there was the shock of Michael Schumacher's engine failure in Malaysia, his tyre troubles in Australia, which gave Alonso and Renault a head start in the championship. More recently, there was the shock of Alonso's engine failure at Monza and his tyre troubles in China, which allowed Schumacher back into the game. And here, this weekend, the World Championship so finely balanced, comes the biggest shock of all. Bridgestone give Ferrari a tyre which is over a second a lap faster than the Michelin in qualifying conditions, and it gives Schumacher the biggest performance advantage he's enjoyed over his rival for the whole season. He is on the front row of the grid. Alonso is fifth. Certainly if it stacks up in a race the way it did yesterday in qualifying, you will not see Schumacher for dust this afternoon, and Alonso will simply be driving for damage limitation. But as always in Formula One, the picture is a little bit more complicated than that, and so is Alonso's task. He has got those two Toyotas you can see there on the second row of the grid, and so many different possibilities as to what may happen. Our understanding is that the Ferraris, Schumacher's got about 4 or 5 laps more fuel in the car than teammate Massa. The two Toyotas are quite light, so they should get off the line quite well. You know that Michael Schumacher's going to have to try and defend against his brother, and well, Alonso, I'm sure, will be looking for that and trying to dive down the middle. That is the top end of the grid. 2 Ferraris, 2 Toyotas, 2 Renaults, 2 Hondas. The top 8, pretty much the state of play at the moment in Formula One, with the BMW 9th, and Rosberg doing an excellent job on his first visit to Suzuka to get himself into the top 10 in qualifying. Raikkonen, you see, outside the top 10, as well as teammate De La Rosa. The first time this season that McLaren have failed to get both their cars into the top 10. Kubica missing the cut as well on this occasion. Mark Webber comprehensively outperformed by his teammate. And you can see the 2 Red Bulls having a terrible time. Coulthard 17th and Dornbos in 18th. And Martin, this whole thing is pretty exciting. Obviously, there's a great layer of tension, but put yourself in Alonso's position at the moment. It's the opposite of China, really. There, Schumacher was 4th or 5th or 6th on the grid and had to come through, was driving for damage limitation. But we've seen Alonso very adaptable in the past, and doesn't lack in determination, does he?
No, and he's fast around now. We've got, unusually for this circuit, we have quite static conditions, albeit a little bit tricky with the wind blowing quite strongly. It looks as if the track should just keep rubbering in and gripping up as the race unfolds. That may actually bring it a little bit towards the Michelin runners, as there's more of those out there putting more Michelin rubber down onto the track. Track is a bit cooler than yesterday. Again, that may help the Michelin runners, but do they need it? The Ferraris, as you pointed out, have been so fast, and you really should expect them to go out front. Michael's a bit heavier. We think he's 4 or 5 laps heavier, as you said. That may challenge him down into turn 1. And if he gets through turn 1 in P2 or better, I think he'll be a mighty relieved man. So there's work to do for him. Alonso is kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he sends one into turn 1, gets it wrong, trips over a Toyota, and he's out of the race and Michael wins, the championship's over anyway. So Alonso really does have to be committed yet sensible down there. Brand spanking new tyres on the front of the Ferrari. Many of the teams will have some new tyres left because of the wet running on Friday and early on Saturday morning. And the top 6 have all elected for brand new tyres. That gives them something around 10 to 15 metres extra performance down towards turn 1, off through the start phase, which obviously is pretty significant. That's effectively a row on the grid, so they've all had to cover each other on that one.
One of the other advantages Ferrari have had because of the Bridgestone being so strong is that Schumacher didn't need to use as many sets of tyres in the qualifying sessions yesterday as Alonso did. And my understanding is that Schumacher has 3 new sets of tyres. In other words, he'll be stopping twice, so it's 3 stints of a race, and in each of them he will have a new set available to him, whereas Alonso has only 1 new set, and he's chosen to use those at the start. So his performance immediately after a pit stop will be nothing like as sharp as Michael Schumacher's is. So you can see the cards are very much stacked in Schumacher's favour. He currently leads the championship by virtue of having won 1 more Grand Prix than Alonso, but they are level on points, as you can see. It's very close between Fisichella and Massa as well for 3rd place in the championship. And in the constructors, it's pretty close as well. Renault ahead in that one by just a point over Ferrari. So there's an awful lot to play for in both championships here. And, well, we're heading into a bit of an unknown, really, because there's so little dry running throughout the free practice sessions that no one's really quite sure what will happen on this track surface in these conditions with these tyres after 7 or 8 laps. I'm sure Michelin are hoping that the Bridgestones will start to suffer some serious problems, but this is the tyre, as Ross Brawn was telling us yesterday after the qualifying session, which Ferrari used in Istanbul, where Felipe Massa won the Grand Prix, and it held up pretty well there, didn't it? So we don't expect it not to hold up here. There you can see the constructors. McLaren in 3rd place. Nothing's going to change there. They won't be caught by Honda, who are pretty solidly in 4th. The top 4 is pretty much established. It's just a question of who's actually going to win the championship. Show you BMW there in 5th. They've done very well this season to move forward. Number of podiums for them, 2 podiums in total. Williams, the ones who've lost out, really, they've slipped down to 8th in the current rankings. And Frank Williams saying yesterday next year's target for him really has to be to rediscover credibility and respectability. Everyone making their way then behind pole sitter Felipe Massa towards the starting grid. Beautiful sunshine here in Suzuka. We're about 400 kilometers away from Tokyo. The nearest major city is the city of Nagoya. Next year we move to Fuji, as we've been hearing, and that's just 40 minutes outside Tokyo. Well, supposedly, but I think the traffic on race day might be a bit different. So the heat and the sun bounces off the bodywork of the cars here at Suzuka as we get ready for the start of the Japanese Grand Prix, the penultimate round of the 2006 Formula 1 World Championship and the penultimate race in the career of the great Michael Schumacher. Will it end with an 8th World Championship? Mathematically, it can end that way today. Whatever happens, Alonso cannot win the title. There they are then. Schumacher on the left, Massa on the right. Alonso is on the same side of the racetrack as Felipe Massa. Schumacher looks so calm, doesn't he, before the start?
Looking at those lights, visor up at the moment. He does look calm. Normally, you'd want to be getting that down and preparing yourself. It's a reasonably complex procedure they follow with getting the start ready and the clutches all ready to get off the line. But as you say, James, they do look very relaxed. The calm before the storm.
Okay, 53 laps, Japanese Grand Prix. Begin now. Massa on the right, Schumacher on the left. Watch out for Alonso. Has he got a good start? Schumacher switches over. Ralph Schumacher. And Michael covers him into turn 1. Alonso is attacking Jarno Trulli up the inside. Into turn 1. Trulli has to go around the outside. Looks like everyone's got safely through what is, after all, one of the fastest first corners. And indeed, it looks as though Alonso has picked up 1 place already off the start line. Yeah,
Button 2. So Trulli dropping down. Button looks like he had a great start in the Honda. Alonso, I thought he might lose out on the way down to turn 3, but he stuck it out on the outside and truly let him go. And that is quite critical for Fernando Alonso. Somehow on this lap, he needs to have a run at Ralph Schumacher too to bring himself into play for the rest of the afternoon. So he's in a Toyota sandwich at the moment, Fernando Alonso, but a perfect start for the Ferrari team, given that I'm sure ideally they really wanted Michael Schumacher on pole, but we still think he got an extra lap of fuel credit back as well in that 3rd phase of qualifying. Michael Schumacher sitting pretty on fuel quantity, pace, and he's got his teammate in front of him.
Yeah, and the weather conditions are certainly playing to them as well. These kind of sunny conditions really favouring the Bridgestone tyres. We're riding on board with the Renault. Massa leading. Michael Schumacher is 2nd. His brother Ralph is 3rd. 4th is Alonso. 5th is Jarno Trulli as we go through 130R for the first time at racing speeds on board the Renault. This is one of the big passing places here. Alonso not close enough, though, to the back of Ralf Schumacher at the end of lap 1. And he'll be looking to see what the Bridgestone tyre does in front of him. As we expect, there's a slight deterioration in performance over the next few laps, and the Michelin holds up. That should give Alonso the opportunity to attack Ralf Schumacher. Time will tell. Jenson Button then is up into 6th place, having started 7th on the grid.
Big squabble there between the Williams of Rosberg and Kubica. Rosberg made it down into turn 1. Coulthard looks like he's taking Liuzzi down into there, just behind De La Rosa now. And we've got a broken front wing on the Honda there, which is Barrichello in front of Kubica. There's been contact somewhere on the first lap. Raikkonen's got himself up to 9th as well, from 11th on the grid.
Well, it's interesting. Kubica started outside the top 10. Rosberg started 10th. He's obviously had a poor start, and he is down there in 12th place, as you say, trying to battle Robert Kubica as Michael Schumacher gets close up to the back of Massa, and Ralf Schumacher runs wide at the exit of the hairpin.
What are we going to see here? Got a replay of the start, and they pretty much got away in formation. Unusually, it was the Renault of Fisichella that was slow away. Alonso there, P4 at the moment. Trulli had a look around the outside of his teammate, and that gave Alonso a window, and he stuck it up the inside and made it work. So Toyota's well away. They were nervous of not getting away in this race, both of them following the Ferraris, no problem, because we think they're quite a bit lighter on fuel. That does help them. On board with Fernando Alonso, look, he's got absolutely no advantage there. So he ducks to the inside. Somehow he knows, a sixth sense tells him there's nobody inside of him, and now he can get up the inside of Trulli, and he hangs it all the way down to turn 3. That's how it worked. And Michael Schumacher's through.
Michael Schumacher passes his teammate Felipe Massa for the lead just as the Japanese director was coming out of an extended replay. Michael Schumacher down the hill at the end of lap 2 takes the lead, which he needs if he's going to win this Grand Prix, obviously. The last thing they wanted was a carbon copy of what happened in Turkey, where, because Massa was on the pole, as Barrichello comes in to replace that new nose. If you remember, there was a safety car period, and it meant that Schumacher had to queue behind Massa, and they don't want a repeat of that. That's why, early on in this Grand Prix, Schumacher's gone past Massa.
It's always a clumsy job to replace the nose of a Formula 1 car, because, of course, the front jack operates against the front wing and the nose to lift the car. So they have to manhandle it into the air to get it on a little trolley, and then change the nose and then lift it up and drop it back down to the ground. So presumably now Massa can reach
Michael Schumacher on the opening sector of this lap. So clearly Massa just lifting off the gas a little bit, and Schumacher going down past the outside. Schumacher leading then, Massa second. Round place, the Spaniard is 4th, 5th is Jarno Trulli, 6th Jenson Button in the Honda, 7th Fisichella, who had a poor start as we saw, 8th Heidfeld in the BMW, 9th is Raikkonen in the McLaren, and 10th Robert Kubica in the second of the BMWs, as we look at race leader Michael Schumacher.
Well, there's a proper queue behind Kubica. He's 10th, and everybody down to 22nd basically is less than a second behind the car in front, and they're side by side in places. Coulthard up to P14 now, but Kubica, having made a flying start, is now actually holding quite a big pack up behind him. The lead is doing a 1:32. Kubica and those behind him 1:36s and even slower.
Yeah, remember, of course, that Kubica started outside the top 10, and so one would imagine he's carrying more. Not doing the same thing as Kubica. He's being badly held up at the moment, having fallen behind the pole at the start. He is in 11th place, and all the cars behind them are solidly outside the top 10, so they can choose their fuel strategy after qualifying. We're understanding from the pit crew that Rubens Barrichello is staying on target to stop twice here this afternoon, which means he's pretty heavy with fuel at this point. So we'll see Barrichello being quite slow, I'd imagine. But I'm sure as the race unfolds, he'll play himself back in. But losing time to a nose change is always a really bad thing for your race effort.
Perfect scenario for Ferrari. I mean, Massa quicker that time than Michael Schumacher, again because of the fuel load, although as we've seen, Massa certainly knows how to pedal a Ferrari around this wonderful racetrack, and this is where he lifted off to let him through. Wasn't going to give him the racing line, was he? But just coasted off, and that's the gap. They built that cushion as we talked about on the grid, build enough of a cushion so he could let Michael through without being under pressure himself. He's now regained that pace. And of course, why it's perfect for them, they're not having to use Massa to slow Alonso down. They've got Ralf Schumacher there in the Toyota, keeping Alonso at bay, although he's not too far behind them on pace. We do think he'll be pitting somewhat earlier than the Ferraris. So Alonso then pretty neutralised behind the Toyotas, or between the Toyotas, rather than bothering the Ferraris.
It's been a while since we've seen a driver so overtly handing over the lead of a race to his teammate like that. Obviously, the whole argument about team orders, which brewed up after the Austrian Grand Prix back in 2002, which caused so much upset. But as one of the Toro Rossos has a big spin, might be Scott Speed, I think, the American driver. No, it's Tony Liuzzi. That's a wrong cap Friday, and we're talking about the whole subject of team orders, which obviously in a tight championship like this is always a talking point. He said, well, there aren't any team orders. You're not allowed them. It's up to the drivers. They know their responsibilities, the number 2 drivers, and in a situation like this, they know what they've got to do. So Massa will have unilaterally made that decision, and there won't be any radio traffic or any paperwork which can incriminate Ferrari and make any suggestion that they told Massa to move over. He knows which side his bread is buttered on.
Well, he said on the grid, didn't he? I'll just give him as much help as I can. I mean, it's just, I don't really consider that team play. That's just common sense at this stage. And why people got so upset about that was when they did that with Schumacher and Barrichello in Austria, early part of the season, when Michael was already way ahead of everybody else. So that's what upset people. This is just common sense now in team play. And Speed got ahead of Coulthard there, because Coulthard had to live off to avoid the spinning Liuzzi. So a good train as ever. The 4 Red Bull cars, 2 Red Bull, 2 Toro Rossos, pretty much line astern on this racetrack. Just Alba's in the middle of them at the moment.
Giancarlo Fisichella, unseen by us, and the Japanese director has got past Jenson Button. Fisichella up into 6th place. Jenson Button then back to 7th, where he started on the grid. What we have here, though, that we are looking at is Scott Speed, as we said, leading a train which includes, he's in the last year's effectively Red Bull car, the Toro Rosso, leading this year's Red Bull car, driven by David Coulthard. That's caused a little bit of upset, shall we say. Coulthard with some fairly strong comments yesterday, which I think will have reverberated back at Milton Keynes with all of the employees of Red Bull. And Christian Horner feeling the need in our build-up programme to just smooth the waters a little bit there and explain what he thinks David was meaning. But clearly, at the end of a frustrating second half of the season for Coulthard, not a great deal of development gone into this car. They're focused very much on the 2007 car designed by Adrian Newey. And Coulthard just giving vent to a few of his frustrations. Lap 7 then, Schumacher leads Massa by a second. Almost 3 seconds behind Michael Schumacher is his brother Ralf in 3rd. 4th.
I think that Alonso will be pretty happy sitting there on lap 7, just 3.5 seconds away from the lead, very much keeping 2nd place Massa firmly in his sights. I think Alonso will be pleasantly surprised. He started to pull away from Trulli, but it's lap 7, as I said. Michael Schumacher leads teammate Massa by exactly 1 second.
So the leaders lapping in the mid to high 1:33s at the moment. Ralf Schumacher is in the 34s, and Alonso on that last link in terms of having a go at Ralf Schumacher, whose pace is dropping off sufficiently for Alonso to be worried about it. He does need to start thinking about getting past Ralf Schumacher now, otherwise the 2 Ferraris are going to start pulling away from him.
Degner 1, but you can't get it collected up in time enough to get it into Degner 2. That's why we often see a lot of incidents down there. Just a merest slip and you're already facing too much trouble to get out of, and that's put Alonso back, hasn't it, that out braking himself. Often happens, you're very close to the car in front, you lose a little bit of aero, and it's much easier then to snatch a wheel. And well, for a tyre to brake properly, it needs to be rotating. As you know from driving on the road, if a wheel's locked, it doesn't slow down anywhere as well.
Across the line then, begin lap 9, Schumacher and Massa. Not going all that quickly at the moment, lapping in the mid-134s now. The pace dropping off. Alonso is faster than this. If he can get past Ralf Schumacher, he might be able to get amongst the Ferraris here. Fisichella's teammate, sorry, is in the high 33s, so he's running in clear air. Gives you an indication of how quick Alonso might be able to go at this time. Lap 9 of the Japanese Grand Prix from Suzuka. Huge capacity crowd, really enjoying the action here. We're riding on board with one of the Renaults. Fernando Alonso is in 4th place behind Ralf Schumacher.
Is he past the Toyota?
It looks like he might have done. That's an overhead shot of, unless that's Fisichella past Trulli. Difficult to tell from this angle. But certainly what we've been seeing in the last couple of laps is that Ferrari are not all that fast at the moment. They're lapping in the mid to high 134s. Alonso was catching Ralf Schumacher pretty quickly. And
now what it was, I think, was Alonso's made a mistake and ended up with Trulli right behind him. He's dropped away somewhere from Ralf. There's Ralf Schumacher. So it looked like he gained a place on the Toyota, but actually made an error somewhere. And in the middle part of the lap, lost a couple of seconds and put himself under pressure from Jarno Trulli. And here it is, second Egner, exactly what I was telling you about. It got too deep into, he obviously never quite collected up out of the first Egner properly. And look at that, Trulli almost getting past him, actually. He must have had to cut him off pretty severely at the kink before the hairpin.
Well, that's 2 mistakes from Alonso in the last 2 laps, because on the previous lap, he outbraked himself into the hairpin in his attempts to try and get past Ralf Schumacher. What I was just saying there is that up to that point, the Ferrari's pace seems to have dropped off by over a second a lap. They're now lapping in the mid-134s, and Alonso was capable of lapping faster than that. He had to get past Ralf, and that was why he was pushing so hard, because at the moment, he's 5 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher. As we cut on board with Christian Albers down in 16th place. That's David Coulthard up in front of us.
That's hurt Alonso badly, although he's now on the rampage again, because Alonso's been matching the Ferrari front-running pace, contrary to everybody's expectations, and he was sitting pretty, obviously, though, a little bit on the ragged edge. Michael Schumacher with Massa still in close company, but Alonso has picked up his pace nicely, and he'll still be quite quickly onto the gearbox of the first of the Toyotas. He needs to clear Ralf Schumacher, and I think his frustration is beginning to show up.
Yeah, he's got Ralf Schumacher impeding him. Also, those couple of mistakes. That last lap from Alonso, a 1:34.2. Michael Schumacher, a 1:34.0. And Alonso taking 8/10 that lap out of Ralf Schumacher. Of course, the gap had gone from almost nothing out to almost 2 seconds. So clearly, this is a fast Renault here in these conditions. It's fast enough to live with the Ferraris. If only he could get past Ralf Schumacher, who's doing a real spoiling job here in 3rd place. The only upside for Alonso at this point is that 11 laps into the Grand Prix, he's still only 5 seconds behind the Ferraris. It's not all over yet. Well, we mentioned that Fisichella had got past Jenson Button. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Renault is now in 6th. And Ted can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, but he's got a problem now. He's got a radio failure in his Renault. I'm just telling you what's going out to him on the pit board. The first message 1 lap ago said radio off. So maybe they haven't got a little sign that says broken. It's putting one that says oil on. So it looks like a bit of sign language from Renault to Fisichella.
Yeah, what he's done, I suspect, a good spot. I suspect what he's done is left the radio switch on, and all they can hear, 19,500 revs coming back at them on the pit wall, and so they want to give him information, and all their cans will be going crazy because Fisichella's left the radio switched on the steering wheel.
Michael Schumacher, and he is right back now with Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota, still holding on to 3rd place here, which is where he qualified for this Grand Prix. An all Ferrari front row, Toyotas on the 2nd row. The only major change at the front then has come from Alonso overtaking Jarno Trulli in the opening couple of corners to go from 5th to 4th place. Apart from that, amongst the front runners, not a great deal has changed since the start of this Grand Prix. But we are now 12 laps into this race, and if the paddock sages are correct, this Toyota of Ralf Schumacher will be pitting in the not too distant future, and then we will see what Alonso can do.
Alonso's not out of contention this afternoon yet, and as I said, he'll be happier. And Toyota we were right on that. Toyota are in fact coming in. Could be, of course, for Jarno Trulli first off, but they'll be roughly on the same strategy. Bit of a glory run in qualifying because they did pull one out of the bag. And it's a good job that Ferrari did go out to cover them yesterday, because otherwise they would have been on the front row of the grid and could well have compromised Ferrari's plans this afternoon. And Alonso, maybe he'll be already advised as to who's coming in, because there's no point in him taking a leery one up the inside here if that car is about to duck into the pit lane. Fisichella is behind the other Toyota, and it doesn't. It's Trulli then pitting. Alonso has the pain of that for another lap, but he's got a good run down into turn one, did Fernando Alonso. I wonder if he got anywhere near Ralf Schumacher.
Yes.
He did.
Yeah, I could see, unfortunately, you could see that coming. Unfortunately, the local director just wanted to follow a Toyota going into the pits instead of watching a pass for third place in the Japanese Grand Prix. Trulli, 6.9 seconds stationary time. That could well be a three-stopper. We'll have to wait and see. He certainly stopped early enough for it to be a three-stopper, but Fernando Alonso is now clear of Ralf Schumacher, and now we will see how fast this Renault is relative to this Ferrari at this stage of the Grand Prix. There it is, Martin.
Yeah, the local director's a complete numpty is what you wanted to say, but at least we're going to get it in replay. And he got a run out of the final corner and Trulli didn't fight too hard on that. Jarno tends not to. I think he knows when he's lost a corner. Now Alonso's the fastest man in the first sector of anybody in the Grand Prix. He sniffs a bit of a surprise result here today. Can Fisichella follow him through? He's all
1:34s just a few laps ago. Now Schumacher is consistently in the mid 1:33s with Massa loyally following in his footsteps. Alonso is sticking a really fast one in here, and this will give us an indication of how quick this car is. This looks like a low 33, possibly even a high 32 from Alonso. If that's the case, it indicates that there's not too much wrong with these Michelin tyres in race conditions. Massa pits from second place. Felipe Massa, the pole sitter. Alonso, a 1:33.1 is 0.6 of a second faster than Schumacher on that lap, as into the pits comes Massa.
Well, that makes Michael Schumacher's, there's a lot of fuel going in there, that makes Michael Schumacher's qualifying effort even more spectacular. Will Massa get down there before there's traffic? That's quite critical to keep him in position. And that's Trulli passing Ralf, so that's worked out for Jarno Trulli too. Schumacher leads, Alonso second, and going even faster now.
In the first sector of this lap alone, he's 0.4 quicker than Michael Schumacher. The gap was 5 seconds last time through. Alonso is setting about closing this gap down. It's probably 2 or 3 laps longer in Schumacher's favour, which is a good thing from his point of view. But it's now up to the sages. Pat Simmons for Renault.
If he can go 3 or 4 more laps, he'll leapfrog Massa. See, that's the problem. They slowed Massa down to give Michael Schumacher clear air. A 1:32.6 against a 1:33.4 for Michael Schumacher. The gap down to 4.6 seconds. Fisichella pits, so we presume Alonso is in on the next lap. Will it be enough to get Alonso in front of Massa? That'll be crucial. Then we've got a real head-to-head this afternoon.
Well, Massa took on quite a lot of fuel at his stop. That's one factor. I think that Ross Brawn felt otherwise Massa might be a bit vulnerable. That's why Massa was long fueled. So I think he probably will jump Massa this time. But the second stop will be interesting.
Traffic too. Traffic for Massa.
Traffic, yeah.
Now Alonso could get out in front of Kubica, could well do. Massa's just gone round in Heidfeld, sorry. Massa's had quite a slow outlap. He's stuck behind a car doing 1:34s when he needs to be doing 1:33s. So this is looking good for Alonso, who's blitzed the first sector fastest time yet again.
Schumacher under real pressure now from Fernando Alonso, who again is taking time off him on this. It's about 0.6 of a second already in the first 2 sectors alone. Alonso is substantially quicker than Schumacher at this phase of the Grand Prix.
Will Alonso have to pit just round the right-hander? If he stays right, he does. He's pitting this lap. So they know how much fuel went in Massa's car. They know what they can do. He's quite cautious against the speed line there. But Alonso, they'll have to fuel him a little bit shorter to let him go after Michael Schumacher. We think Schumacher can do another 5 laps, though.
Yep, that's the estimation. This is lap 16. Into the pits comes the world champion. And things are going better for him than he probably would have imagined this morning. It's just an indication of how exciting this championship has been. No one's really quite sure
Massa's
what the tyres are going to do. Here comes Massa. There's the white line. You can't cross that. Heidfeld has helped Alonso very much. And as he comes out of the pits, he's got Heidfeld, who's racing for position, yet to make his stop. Once again, BMW putting plenty of fuel in that car. And Massa is now 2 places down on where he was.
Right, game on then for Fernando Alonso. And that's no coincidence. They would have fueled that Renault exactly. They want to go as far as they can, of course, to cover off Massa in the next round of stops, but they knew they needed to get out in front of Heidfeld, and that's worked perfectly for them. Massa's going to be ruining having to back a car all through the first stages of the Grand Prix, and this is how close it was. Another second and Alonso would have been fighting them off going into the turn 1, trying to regain speed. That was absolutely perfect for him, and Massa's heart will sink.
First time anything's gone really right for Renault for some time. Here we see Heidfeld battling with Massa over 4th place. It's 4th place because in 3rd place at the moment is Jenson Button in the Honda. He's just come into the pits from 3rd, but he was holding it down for a while. Already a podium visitor in the past here in Suzuka back in 2004. He loves this racetrack, always goes well here, and he emerges behind Robert Kubica, who is currently in 9th place. So Jenson is now 10th, but behind several cars who've yet to stop.
Yes, and if you're wondering why Massa's not being blue flag assisted past Heidfeld, because currently it is full position because Heidfeld has not stopped either, but he's now doing 135s and the leaders are doing 133s. This is wrecking Massa's chances. It's Raikkonen coming up behind him, another man who's yet to stop, running a little bit longer this afternoon. Schumacher leads from Alonso, Heidfeld, Massa, Raikkonen. Truly did get ahead of Ralf Schumacher. Fisichella, why did he end up still behind both Toyotas? But
he pitted.
Yeah, he pitted and ended up obviously quite a long stop because he looked like he'd got one of the Toyotas. He had one of the Toyotas before he stopped.
Yep, so he ends up behind the Toyotas, and what was interesting is that such was the pace of Alonso in the run-up to those first round of stops. He was able to stop and put the same amount of fuel in as Felipe Massa, so there was no tactical aspect to this. I mean, he really could do it and get out in front of Massa. That's worked beautifully for the Renault team. We're riding on board now with a rather frustrated Felipe Massa, formerly pole sitter, now running 5th. Looking back at him now from the BMW Sauber of Nick Heidfeld.
BMW's been very strong in the second half of the season. Right, Schumacher then is what I've been looking for. Alonso's first flying lap on full tanks or heavier tanks is about 7/10 slower than Michael. It's going to give Michael time to get away now. He's 28 seconds ahead. Got to make his pit stop too. So Michael will still comfortably lead the Grand Prix if he has a clean stop. And it's a question of can Alonso keep sensible pace here while Schumacher's now running down.
Taking a year off from Formula 1 to basically enjoy some time with his wife Jean on the beach. And Chris Dyer then will be in Schumacher's ear at the moment. Into the pits comes Schumacher. He wasn't able to go as far as many people suspected. This is only lap 18, and that it means it is only 3 laps after Fernando Alonso. So he'll still lead when he comes out, almost certainly. But if Alonso starts to pick up the pace now, this could be game on for a proper fight to the finish here between these two.
They practice this all through free running, and the noise those things make when they're hitting the limiter like that just shakes your body. It's a horrible noise, but they just leave it buried against the limiter, ready for a quick launch out of the pit box. And Alonso then with Michael Schumacher in his sight. Schumacher fueled up heavily too.
Well, that looks less than 4.5 seconds to me. The margin between Schumacher and Alonso before we got into that pit stop sequence was 4.5 seconds. And it looks to me as though Alonso may well have closed that down a bit. Into the pits comes Nick Heidfeld from what was 5th place. Oh, beg you, but out of the pits goes Nick Heidfeld, I should say. And where did he feed in around Fisichella? That's the question. There's the answer. He's
interesting to see that it's Alonso and Massa, the 2 fastest men in the middle sector on this lap, quite a bit faster than Michael Schumacher, recovering from his scheduled pit stop. So let's see, I think it's Massa's been closing on Alonso. It looks like Alonso's going to drag him along to the back of Michael Schumacher as well. They could be 3 of them line astern in the not too distant future. We're on lap 20 of the Grand Prix. Most people have now stopped once of the key runners, with the exception of fourth place man Kimi Raikkonen, who you're looking over the shoulder of at the foot of the hill as he heads through Dunlop and up to those tricky Degner curves. Raikkonen with the luxury of being able to feel longer. He was outside the top 10, long faces of McLaren yesterday. Both cars out of the top 10. And worst case scenario, both drivers saying, well, actually, it didn't feel too bad. We're just slow. You're better to have a slow car that feels dreadful. At least you know you've got somewhere to go, even if you don't know exactly where that is. Button fed back into 9th place with the Honda after his stop. Just Raikkonen and Kubica in front of him who've not yet stopped. So Button looking like he might get a few points, but nothing more than that at the moment. Barrichello way out of contention in 18th, having had an early stop with a broken front wing. Interestingly, on that lap, Michael Schumacher did the 1:34.1, 1:34.2 for Alonso. The gap has stabilised at 5.5 seconds as they prepare for one of the McLarens.
Got a car off at the chicane. I believe it's the spiker of Christian Albers, who's lost the right rear corner and the rear wing. This is how it happened. Oh my goodness me, that's catastrophic failure at the back of the car.
That may well need a safety car. There's a lot of debris on the circuit, and all that the shards of carbon when the tyres are under full load coming in there, high speed and heavy braking. I have to say, I think I'd put the safety car out right now.
Well, the race director, Charlie Whiting, along with Herbie Blash up there in race control, they've got lots and lots of very detailed cameras as Massa picks his way through the debris flap from his pit stop. And Michael Schumacher was identical to Fernando Alonso's. These two at the moment seem to be on a very similar level, and it's really just the lead that Schumacher had been able to build over Alonso in the first stint, because he had Massa and Ralf Schumacher between himself and the Renault driver. That's what is the cushion that Schumacher is now sitting on. There is what looks like a drive shaft sitting in the middle of the racetrack, and that could do with being moved.
I really can't believe we haven't got a safety car. I've got shards of carbon fibre all over the place. You might think it was lucky it didn't happen in the 130R corner, but those type of failures only happen when you hit the brakes and you get a reversal of load. I suspect possibly even the drive shaft, either the drive shaft broke and then it tears the suspension apart, or braking loads just ripping the wishbones apart there. Maybe he had a touch with another car earlier in the Grand Prix down into the first corner, but
deceleration at that point. Riding on board with Jenson Button. As you said, Martin, good chance of some points today for him. He's in 8th place. Kimi Raikkonen is the only car who hasn't stopped yet. He's in 4th place. He's only 10 seconds down the leader. And, well, a pit stop for him under a safety car, were there to be one, would be put him right in contention.
Well, all of the cars have driven through the debris now once. And, of course, the tyres are massively loaded right there as finally Raikkonen pits at the end of lap 22. The race leaders are on 23 now, and he did get himself up into 4th place. He'll haul himself up into the points, I'd imagine. So it's working out kind of okay for Raikkonen and McLaren. Not so well for De La Rosa. Back in P13 at the moment, he stopped a lap before. So let's just work out the relative performances then of Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso. 5.5 seconds between them. Identical first sector times, and Massa just a 1/10 of a second.
A lot of vibration in the car. But I just wanted to keep pushing, you know. It was the first time we were quite competitive, so I just continued, and then when I was starting to brake before the slow chicane, just the right wheel passed me in the rear wing. So it was okay, you know. Formula One is safe, so it's not a problem. But it's really poor for the guys, you know, because they work really hard. And it was the first time we really were fighting the Red Bulls. And I think without the vibration and everything, that maybe we could beat them today. And that's just a shame it didn't happen.
Thank you.
So Rubens Barrichello pitting while we were listening to Christian Albers, whose car literally exploded at the back just a moment ago. And Barrichello will have to stop again this afternoon, so he's going to end up having stopped 3 times. Barrichello changed a nose after damage to his front wing in the early exchanges of this Grand Prix. Just to bring you up to speed, if you're just joining us, Felipe Massa led off the start line from pole position with Schumacher second, Ralf Schumacher third. Alonso able to pick up a place from 5th on the grid. He was 4th in the on the opening lap ahead of Jarno Trulli. He was able then, though, to pass Ralf Schumacher on the racetrack for 3rd place, but he'd lost about 5 seconds to Michael Schumacher by that time, and that is the cushion that Schumacher is sitting on now. What we started to see as a very brave Marshall moves Alba's drive shaft from the racetrack. What we started to see through the middle of that first stint was that the Michelin tyre on the Renault of Alonso was every bit a match for the Bridgestone on the Ferrari, and it could well be that as this stint unfolds, the same picture emerges. Currently, there's very little to choose between them. Schumacher and Alonso in lap time, just a 10th or 2, and the gap is still sitting there at 5 seconds. Into the pits comes Scott Speed.
Interestingly, Kimi Räikkönen has just done the fastest middle sector of anybody, suggesting those Michelins are working well now in the current track conditions. So it's interesting. The gap down to 5.1 seconds now, Alonso to Michael Schumacher. He's just edging it in as the Super Aguri pits.
Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Yeah, just quick one on the spikers. Apparently Montero has not had any radio traffic to him telling him to watch out, so it looks like there was an isolated case, maybe a lockup that caused that vibration for Albers. But on the Renault tyres, the Michelins, they look in great shape when they came off in the pressure.
Manages to get round the Super Aguri, though, of Takuma Sato, who's just made his first stop of the afternoon. Luckily for Jarno Trulli, he cleared him. Unfortunately for Ralf Schumacher, he didn't. Those two circulating 4th and 5th, having a good personal scrap, the 2 Toyotas. There's also a wonderful in-house scrap going on over 9th place between Nick Heidfeld and Robert Kubica. Those two separated by just a few car lengths in the battle over 9th.
Fastest man on the track remains Kimi Räikkönen with that fresh set of tyres, despite the fuel load. He's 8th at the moment, catching Jenson Button quite quickly. The 2 leaders did identical lap times again. The gap remains in the low 5 seconds. We're on lap 25 of 53. But curiously, Massa had a poor lap and is having a poor first sector too. Don't know if he's in traffic or what's going on.
This Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher dead level on points, but Schumacher's won 7 races to Alonso's 6, so he's on top for that reason. If it finishes like this, they'll go to Brazil for the season finale in 2 weeks' time, with Schumacher enjoying a 2-point lead. And, well, that's all counted. Certainly better than anybody at Michelin would have anticipated. They really had their heads in their hands yesterday after the Bridgestone tyre turned out to be a lap faster on the first lap in qualifying. But a different picture emerging here this afternoon.
There's the chronology on the bottom of your screen. He took a 1/4 of a second out of him on lap 25. Alonso lost a bit on lap 26, and another 1/3 of a second faster on lap 27. He is so on the ragged edge through there. How much does Michael Schumacher wish he hadn't have pulled that parking stunt in Monaco, and he hadn't have tried to take Heidfeld when he didn't need to at the Hungarian Grand Prix when Alonso was already out of the race, because he would have so much more of a cushion now. But Alonso then on a charge, they're still pulling away quite handsomely from Felipe Massa.
Just 2 great minds, 2 great drivers locked in combat, and we've still got half of this Grand Prix to go. A lot can change. Bit of a scrap there between what looks like Coulthard and Dornbos over 14th place, and Michael Schumacher is coming up to lap this crowd.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you're lapping a fight within a fight, as it were. And the gap down to 4.5 seconds now. Alonso's closing that in. And especially if you're the first one along, as Michael Schumacher is, they're busy watching each other, especially these 4 Red Bull cars that are all line astern here. The Honda got out of the way, but that was the Honda of Barrichello that's having a bad day with that broken front wing in the first lap. Michael's got a face full of various Red Bulls then. Let's hope he doesn't choke on all that Red Bull, because Fernando Alonso is charging up behind. Of course, he's then got the same problem of getting through the traffic. At least they've had a wake-up by then.
Well, this is going to play into Alonso's hands. Of course, he too has got to get through the same traffic. We're some way off second round of pit stops. Expecting that around about the mid-30s, 35, 36, 37, something along those lines. Well, Michael Schumacher, if he wins today's Grand Prix, it'll be his 92nd career victory. It's a stunning thought, but that will equal Senna and Prost put together. The two greatest drivers in Formula One before Michael Schumacher strolled into the paddock at Spa in 1991 and announced his presence. He will have got as many race wins as those two great men put together.
Michael lost 7/10 in the first sector of this lap, passing cars. Alonso's been a bit steady in the middle sector, and only takes 3/10 out of him despite all of that traffic. And Fernando then not quite working out there. He's not making hay there while Michael is in amongst all that traffic.
His last lap, though, was 3/10 quicker than the Ferrari. So performance evenly matched, with a slight edge favouring Alonso at this stage of the Grand Prix, just as it was in the middle of the first stint as well. The gap down to 4.2 seconds. It's come down from 5.5 over the last 5 laps. And now Alonso's got to try and side through. We'll find out whether a red car is more effective in the mirrors than a blue and yellow one. As Alonso approaches this scrum, he's in second place, closing in on Schumacher. Massa third, Trulli fourth, Ralf Schumacher fifth, Fisichella still in 6th place, Button still going well in 7th, with Kimi Raikkonen closing in on him in 8th place. So the gap between them was 4.2 seconds when they first...
Yeah, he still took another 10th out of Schumacher's lead. But he'll need all the same amount of help if he's going to stay on course here. 29, 4.2 was the gap. Next man up to be lapped is Scott Speed, then it's Dornbos. Coulthard has let Michael Schumacher through, so Schumacher's clear of it. Oh, and Alonso, and just got away with it.
Scott Speed it was, who he was passing. Now he's just got to get through Dornbos and Coulthard, and then there's 24 seconds of clear track for him to enjoy. On board with Michael Schumacher. Has he got any more traffic in front of him? Doesn't look like it. Just Coulthard, actually, a couple of seconds up the road. Out of the chicane, down the hill. Where is Coulthard?
Now the gap is up to 5 seconds now, look.
He's already got him. He's behind him, so now Schumacher is in clear traffic. Here comes Alonso. Dornbos gives him room. Hopefully Coulthard will do the same. The gap has gone up a little bit, though. Alonso's lost 9/10 through the traffic.
Trulli pits with a second schedule stop. They're a little bit out of phase, really, with the rest of the Grand Prix.
Got a car off at the second Degner corner. Scott Speed, the American driver in the Toro Rosso, who was running in 16th place, battling with Michael Schumacher. He was then leapfrogged by Alonso in the first round of pit stops. Alonso passed Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota on the racetrack as well. That's how Alonso climbed up into second place here this afternoon. The gap was 5 seconds after the first round of pit stops. Alonso got it down to 4.2, but he and Schumacher have just gone through a load of traffic. Coulthard, Dornbos, Speed, Liuzzi, and that has cost Alonso 1.3 seconds. So the gap is now back to 5.5 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think it was all traffic that last lap, though, because Alonso cleared David Coulthard quite early on, and he was just playing slower. Michael's pushing very hard at the moment. They're way quicker than Massa, who's now stuck in that traffic as well. They're 12 seconds clear of him, but Alonso struggling to hang on to Schumacher's raw pace.
Back out on track goes Ralf Schumacher. There's his teammate, Jarno Trulli. These two are squabbling over what is really 4th and 5th places here this afternoon, but also Fisichella, who is running a different strategy from them. He's going to try and leapfrog both of them as the Grand Prix unfolds. Fisichella qualified 6th, both Toyotas on row 2, so that's what's going on here this afternoon. It's a three-way battle for the final, for 4th place between Fisichella, Ralf Schumacher.
10th faster in the second sector. And, but it's ended up identical, as you said, at a 1:33.1. Massa comes in at a 33.9. Gap extends. But it does seem as if Michael Schumacher at the moment has got an answer for the young Spaniard. What's going on behind? Fisichella in a solid 4th place at the moment, as I said, out of sync with the Toyotas. Button up to P5 at the moment with a pit stop due.
Well, remember, Schumacher did have a new set of tyres available to him for each of the 3 stints here this afternoon. Alonso took his new set in the first stint, but because he used so many up during practice and qualifying, he didn't have that luxury. Look, lap 30 is the end of that sequence. Now Alonso trying to reverse it. But the gap stays at 5.5 seconds. Which is really the cushion that Schumacher able to establish in the early laps, as Alonso was stuck behind Ralf Schumacher and Felipe Massa. Down the back straight they come, into 130R corner. With these V8 engines, all the drivers saying this isn't really a corner anymore, you just turn it in, it's like a sort of, more like a straight really. It's gone as a challenge of that wonderful corner. Yeah, let's not forget that's where Alonso passed Schumacher last year around the outside. Someone's off, though. It's Kubica in the BMW.
Yeah, he was P10. Beginning to make a few mistakes, young Kubica, but he's certainly been mighty impressive in his early Grand Prix races. And Michael's gone, that's the same old story, out of shape in Degner 1, go and have your accident in Degner 2. And did he make it into the tyre barrier? Difficult to see from there. But anyway, all 4 wheels are on and pointing roughly in the right direction. And Kubica back underway. Lucky boy.
How long does it take after you do that to clean the tyres up before they give you the grip again like they used to?
Half a lap. On this kind of circuit, when you've got high-speed corners, that soon polishes them back up again. But depends on the temperature and the track layout. Alonso's desperately trying to respond to Schumacher's burst of pace. On lap 33, the Toyotas still line astern. They're down in 7th and 8th at the moment, but they've made their second stops.
Well, we think that Michael Schumacher is going to be able to stay out a few laps longer than Fernando Alonso, which is certainly going to give him the advantage tactically in terms of track position. Here is the battle between the 2 Toyotas. At the moment, Jarno Trulli is ahead of Ralf Schumacher. They're 7th and 8th on a different strategy from everyone else here this afternoon. And Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
Yeah, just a quick word on Jenson Button's strategy. He needs to be putting in the laps now in the low 34s because he's racing Ralf Schumacher at the moment. He's about, 19 seconds ahead of him. So that should be enough for a pit stop. Well, now we're riding on board with Ralf, I believe. But Honda down here think they're fighting Fisichella and perhaps Raikkonen. They think they'll be able to do Ralf quite easily.
Well, what's happening for Ralf at the moment is he's behind Trulli, and they're both woefully slow, 3 to 4 seconds.
Jarno has a problem because he's too slow at the moment.
Exactly. That's Ralf to the team. And we don't know the response as Fisichella makes his second scheduled stop of the afternoon. It's a tricky pit lane, it's downhill. You pull off the fast lane onto a very shiny piece of concrete. It's so easy to mow your boys down, and away he goes.
Nice stop by Renault, 8.8. That'll take Fisichella through to the finish of this Grand Prix. He's going to rejoin in front of the Toyotas. Here they come. Jarno Trulli struggling for pace at the moment. Now into the 1:37, Jarno Trulli. So Ralf Schumacher clearly getting a bit frustrated behind him. They are 3 seconds a lap slower than the race leaders at the moment, and they are, and indeed than Jenson Button. So Button is easily going to have these two.
And yeah, they're going to get mugged by Heidfeld if they're not careful, if they carry on at that pace. Louise has news about Honda.
Yeah, I'm down at Honda at the moment. Bit of a drama down here. They've had a bit of a power cut. Now, in the hospitality area, that just means the tellies have gone off, no big problem. But in the garage, more significantly, it's mean that they've lost the telemetry racks as well. So Jenson and Button and Rubens Barrichello running on their own at the moment, whilst the team tried to sort out the problem there. Running generators into the...
It'll get lonely out there without that telemetry and all that stuff talking to them. The Toyotas, though, are not going to be lonely for much longer because Heidfeld has just reeled them in, as we expected. Ralph's busy running off the track there in the last chicane in absolute frustration, I'd imagine, because they are, as we said, woefully slow at the moment. The lead of Michael Schumacher, meanwhile, is up to 5.9 seconds as we're watching the Toyota pair squabble. And this is, as Ted suggested, allowing Button and Raikkonen the perfect chance to leapfrog them.
Absolutely right. It's the longer this goes on for, the better it is for Jenson Button and Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen is 9.5 seconds behind Jenson Button. He qualified 11th, Button qualified 7th as Yamamoto, Sakon Yamamoto in the Super Aguri comes into the pits, one of the 2 Japanese drivers in the field. Word on the street here in Suzuka is that that car next year will be occupied by none other than Anthony Davidson. Current Hansa Tepps driver. There's a problem at the back of that car, though. I'm sure Davidson will be hoping it's a bit more reliable next year. Into the pits with 18 laps to go comes second place man Fernando Alonso.
And Massa, it looks like he's coming in behind Fisichella, meanwhile lapping somebody. There's Massa. That's how much behind Fernando Alonso is now. A complete pit stop, and through goes Rubens Barrichello. Has Alonso got anything left in his pocket to come back at Michael Schumacher? Ralf Schumacher still looking at the back of his teammate. Button is pushing hard in the low 133s. He knows this is a great moment for him.
Yep, good chance of a 4th place here this afternoon for Jenson Button. Started 7th, to finish 4th would be a great achievement really for him as he caps off what's been a by and large quite disappointing season. But both he and the Honda Wallers are all talking in terms of a championship challenge in 2007. They are very confident about the work going on in Tochigi in Japan and back at Brackley in England to make the Honda 2007 package a potential World Championship challenging package. And Button's certainly very confident about their ability to adapt. Next year, everyone's on Bridgestone tyres. Into the pits comes the race leader, Michael Schumacher. Only a lap longer than Fernando Alonso then. And he should have enough in his pocket to be able to rejoin in front.
He had a 5.6 second lead. They've reacted to the Renault stop. And away he goes, fueled up to the end of the Grand Prix. And Alonso will appear at the top of your screen. But Michael Schumacher has, and he's still tucked up behind Barrichello as Alonso. Barrichello will surely yield down the pit straight. And he does, gives Alonso the racing line. But Michael comfortably rejoins in the lead as Alonso on his outlap does a 1:53.1. That's pretty good.
Felipe Massa absolutely flying back in 4th place. And so now Alonso, if he's going to win this Grand Prix, he's going to have to do it on the track as Dornbos cuts up Yamamoto on the way out of the pit lane. We've got 17 laps to go here to the finish in Suzuka. Schumacher out of the race, and Alonso cannot win this World Championship here, but he will go to Brazil in 2 weeks' time with a 10-point advantage over Michael Schumacher. So any kind of points finish for him in Brazil makes him the world champion. A catastrophic, what looks like an engine failure, could be transmission at the back of the Ferrari, and it's all over for Michael Schumacher.
How often do you see that? Schumacher, the right bank of the V8's gone. Has he put a lot of oil on the track? I don't think he has. That's being burned rather than spilled. Degner too pulls off to the left-hand side. And, well, Alonso hasn't won the race yet, so he hasn't got the 10 points. But there is the highly unusual picture of a Ferrari blowing up in Formula One, and Fernando Alonso would have been cheering and laughing as if he was in a Spanish bullfight with that one.
They can't believe it on the Ferrari timing wall. The dream looks like it's over. We're still 16 laps from the finish, of course. And anything can happen, but there will be a gigantic smile on the face of Fernando Alonso, who now has the huge lead over Felipe Massa, who will not really be able to take it away from him. He's just got to bring it home now, Alonso. Raikkonen is third, yet to make his second stop of the afternoon. Jenson Button is fourth, Fisichella fifth, and Jarno Trulli in sixth place. I believe that's Schumacher's first engine failure since 2001 in a Grand Prix. What a terrible time for it to happen.
Lap 38, Massa is catching Alonso pretty quickly. It's not going to be a comfortable end by over a second on the previous lap, and that news will be going out to Fernando Alonso real soon. Button was running in second, but he's pitted.
Michael Schumacher leading this race after the second round of pit stops. He's out of this Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso is leading. Felipe Massa, Schumacher's teammate, is in second place, and Alonso has just 15 laps now. There you can see Alonso going past Michael Schumacher. His first engine failure, I believe, since 2001, and what an awful time for it to happen. As Ross Brawn, the technical director of Ferrari, said on Friday, any mistake at this stage is going to be very, very expensive. And everybody in the Ferrari garage and at Bridgestone, their hearts hit the floor because Michael Schumacher is out of this Grand Prix. The dream looks like it's over. If things stay as they are here, he's going to be 10 points behind Fernando Alonso.
We saw Alonso with his engine failure back in Monza. Michael's now had his, and but Alonso is not comfortable for him. Massa's still faster. Massa has got a great job to do now. But Alonso's just done a 33.7, 1 minute 33.7, 34.5 for Massa. Bit of a scrappy lap. Raikkonen's running third, but we believe he's got a pit again yet. So that'll effectively put Fisichella up into third place. Looking good for Renault too on the Constructors' title in that case. And Button probably in a net fourth at the moment, having a solid afternoon. Still the Toyotas are racing each other, but off the pace in 6th and 7th.
Yeah, the only question really is between Raikkonen and Button over that what is going to be fourth place. At the moment, Raikkonen is 11 seconds clear of Button. I think that's probably going to be enough when Raikkonen makes his second stop for Button to take the place. Should do. Certainly Button was far enough ahead earlier on in the Grand Prix. Sato drives out of the pit lane.
The radio, it is engine related pretty clearly, but they won't know the exact cause until they get the car back. As you say, it was his first engine failure since Indy 2001, which is amazing, James, but that engine was on its second race. And as Ross Brawn said yesterday, I think you were there, he said we do tend to stress these engines harder towards the end of the season within limits when we can, so that might have something to do with it.
Oh, we've got Mark Webber off the racetrack. Mark Webber from 12th place in the Williams. Looks like he's had quite a big impact with the tyre barrier on the exit of the chicane at the top of the lap, the end of the lap, and knocked the left front corner off.
Coulthard's dropped out of the race too, unseen by us. And what's going to happen to Webber? Does he drop it on the grass? He got on the grass at the top. There's a couple of cars we've seen struggling out of there, and that's unusual really. They've got enough grip. They try to run round the outside to give themselves better traction, but it's unusual to see them actually making it onto the grass. Webber is out of the race then, so add Webber to Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard and Albers for retirement at the moment. Lap 41, Alonso leads by 10 seconds over Felipe Massa.
Well, Massa was the pole sitter here this afternoon, his second career pole, as we take another look at that incident involving Webber.
I think he just ran wider than he intended. I don't think he had a failure on the way in. Certainly, it's not going to go any further than that. A bag of bits hanging off the side of that Williams. He steers it over into safety, so no need for any safety cars on that one. No debris on the racetrack. But Webber was in 12th place and has now, of course, retired to add to the other three. De La Rosa pits from P10. Quiet afternoon for Pedro De La Rosa. Raikkonen going much better in the other Ferrari.
Well, I went along yesterday to Ron Dennis's traditional Saturday time. Hamilton's already had his first Formula One test with them, with the team. As into the pits comes Raikkonen, and Hamilton will be testing again next week in Jerez. If he goes well there, you might see him racing in Brazil.
Well, this is a critical stop for Raikkonen. Can he get out in front of the Toyotas? Well, they didn't leave a lot of margin spare there, and they don't have any margin. And there are the Toyotas in the top right-hand corner of your picture. Jenson Button is ahead of him too. So Button did get up to 4th place. Fisichella moves into 3rd. It's on your screen now.
That is an accurate graphic then. Alonso leading Massa 2nd, Fisichella 3rd, having started from 6th place on the grid, and Jenson Button 4th, having started in 7th place on the grid. Massa led in the initial stages from the pole position, with Michael Schumacher 2nd. Ralf Schumacher was 3rd off the grid in the Toyota. Alonso, though, able off the start line to get past Jarno Trulli up into 4th place. We then saw a switch on lap 3 as Massa let Michael Schumacher go through into the lead. And over the course of the first stint, Alonso able to overtake Ralf Schumacher on the racetrack and then leapfrog Massa at the first round of pit stops. At this, it was infinitely superior to the Michelin on the Renault. It turned around, though, and Alonso able to close up on Michael Schumacher. And after the first round of stops, as Barrichello comes in for the 3rd time this afternoon, on the 3rd round of stops, they went back on track with Alonso put him out of this Grand Prix and put him potentially 10 World Championship points behind Alonso with only one more race to go, which means that any kind of score in Brazil will hand Alonso the World Championship regardless of what Michael Schumacher does. A complete reversal
as well, and you do get a heat build-up, and that's as soon as you get back out onto the track, put the engine back under pressure, that's when they so often fail. Lap 43, Alonso continues to lead Massa, keeping it at around 10 seconds.
Fastest lap classification, this race lap, and Jenson Button the 5th fastest. Good effort by Kubica as well. This is just an outright indicator, really, of pace. Also indicates that Fisichella hasn't really been hustling too much this afternoon. In the same car as Fernando Alonso, only the 7th fastest race lap.
Yeah, and well, you're going to have to hope Heikki Kovalainen is hot when he put him in next year, because Fizzy just has to wait for his day. The rest of them, he's solid, but nothing better than that. De La Rosa, where is he? He's a full minute behind his teammate as well. So that's the difference these sort of circuits can make within a team.
We mustn't forget that Pedro De La Rosa, I mean, he lived here in Japan. He won the Japanese Formula 3 Championship, Formula Nippon GTs. He knows this place like the back of his hand. He's been here many, many more times than Kimi Raikkonen, but struggling to put together a real race weekend here, Pedro De La Rosa, after a couple of decent points finishes earlier on, just after he took over from Montoya. Podium in Hungary, of course. into the closing stages of the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. What an extraordinary race this has been. In the early stages, the Ferraris led. Michael Schumacher ahead of Felipe Massa. Alonso managed to work his way up to third place from fifth on the grid. And it was really after the second round of pit stops that the real drama kicked in, as Michael Schumacher pushing very, very hard to get away from Alonso. The gap just around 5 seconds at that point. Possibly running high revs, certainly using the maximum of the engine to try and put some distance between himself and Alonso. The engine seems to have failed down at the Degner corners, and Michael Schumacher is out of this Grand Prix, and he looks like he's out of the World Championship as well. With 1 round to go, Alonso is on target to have a 10-point lead over him, and any kind of score in Brazil in 2 weeks' time will make him a champion. You're riding on board with Kimi Raikkonen, who's closing in third place. He has leapfrogged the Toyotas as well, and Button and Raikkonen are following in his wake. It looks going to be quite a close finish between those 3 cars. 12 seconds behind, and not able to do anything about the Spaniard.
Jensen's gone in too deep at that hairpin the last 2 laps. He's had to respond. They've been on the radio. Kimi's catching you, get on with it. And still Ralf Schumacher's behind teammate Jarno Trulli for 6th and 7th. 2 BMWs 8th and 9th. Heidfeld and Kubica fighting each other closely as well. And Michael doing it, well, we did our best. Sometimes you can get a hydraulic failure that puts a lot of smoke out of the back at the same time as losing your throttle and your gear shift. So it's not always engine failures, despite it looking remarkably like the right bank of his V8 having a technical problem. That's what I'd guess it is, but we'll wait and see after the race to find out exactly what it is. But the main race out there at the moment then is, can Raikkonen catch Button for 4th place? Raikkonen's just had a poor lap. The gap back up to 3.8 seconds.
Well, Schumacher has never done losing very well when it comes to commiseration with his own team. He's always said that being in Ferrari is like being in a family, and that was very much a family just commiserating with itself. 1 or 2 of those mechanics almost in tears, I think. They weren't able to give him a reliable car when he most needed it. And so much of the... And Schumacher is out and looking very much as though he's going to be runner-up, a position he doesn't really understand, to Fernando Alonso this year in the title race.
Yeah, but if he wins in Brazil, he will take the championship on count back of most victories. You know, you only need the same thing to happen again. Alonso have an engine problem there or trip over somebody, and weather conditions, it's always pretty tricky in Brazil. So it ain't over till it's over, and it could just be the same thing in 2 weeks' time. Kubica's still fighting hard with Heidfeld for the final World Championship point with BMW, but it's not over yet. They can still win this title in Brazil.
Oh, you're absolutely right. They absolutely can. It would be quite some challenge, but he's faced a few in his time, and well, we'll see in 2 weeks' time whether he can do something about it. We've seen David Coulthard retiring from this.
What was your pace like? Were you surprised at how well the Michelin seemed to do in race compared to what they were like in qualifying?
Not really. You know, we were racing with the Midlands, and it was clear we were quicker in some areas, slower than others. But I got stuck in behind Scott, who was running a bit slow after Tonio spun, and then that held me a bit. But other than that, I was just trying to run my race.
Thanks, David.
Alonso's lead up to 14 seconds. Presumably that's the, I think they run the seamless shift on that Red Bull at the moment. So some kind of gearbox malfunction there for David Coulthard, as you said.
You're +8 to speed. You're +8 seconds to speed.
Takuma Sato, 8 seconds ahead of Scott Speed, and beating a Toro Rosso and a Spiker he's on target to do as well, because Montero is behind Scott Speed. That's would be quite a good result really here for the fledgling Super Aguri team to beat a Toro Rosso and a Spiker. And the engineer just saying, watch out for the BMWs coming through to lap you, and be aware that you're 8 seconds ahead of the next man you're racing.
Yeah, he's lapping in the 36s, 2 seconds off the leading pace. When you think that team didn't even exist last year at this time, and over the winter from a standing start, they got it together. I think they've had a very impressive year, actually. We haven't seen much of them, of course, in the results, the Super Aguris, but we've got to respect what they've achieved and assume that Honda can give them a few more goodies next year and move them forward too.
Well, that's certainly the word on the street, that a car not dissimilar to the one that Jenson Button is currently running around 4th place in at the moment will be in the hands of Super Aguri next year with the Honda engine, of course. And as I mentioned before, Honda's test driver Anthony Davidson at the wheel.
Go for it, Robert, go for it, you're allowed.
You are allowed to go for it. That means to attack your own teammate.
Go and pass Heidfeld, go and pass Heidfeld.
That's it, your teammate Heidfeld, pass him.
It's not even Nick, it's Heidfeld now. Won't be passing him through there.
Just to be clear, that's not a team order, that's his own race engineer. Going to be next year, because he now knows all of the racetracks, and BMW are definitely on an upward curve here in Formula One. They could well be nibbling at the heels of the front-running teams next year, all of whom are losing someone or something fundamental, remember. Ferrari losing Schumacher and Ross Brawn, Renault are losing Alonso, and there's be a lot of changes next year, and a lot of possibility that the order of things might change a little bit at the top.
Jensen's safe now in 4th place. He's now 7.5 seconds clear. Raikkonen has slowed considerably, and suddenly the Toyotas are coming back at him. So a big turnaround there, unless it was just a mistake or traffic. Speed pits for Toro Rosso. Now you have to wonder just how happy Toro Rosso are with their 2 drivers. They make a lot of mistakes. But is Speed the 5th retirement? Webber ran wide, it seems, in the final corner. Speed looks like he's out of the Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher, suspected engine failure. Coulthard lost 4th gear and other gearbox gremlins. And Albers had what I think was drive shaft failure, ripping his rear suspension apart, coming into the final chicane. 5 men out of the race then, 17 remaining. Alonso, with 3 laps to go, 15 seconds clear of Massa now. Massa was not able to put him under any pressure, and Fernando Alonso looking supremely strong.
He certainly is. He's a very, very strong individual, both physically and mentally, and he's soaked up so much disappointment in the last few Grand Prix. The engine failure in Monza, which is exact mirror image of what's happened here today. Someone's off the racetrack there.
BM, isn't it?
No, it's one of the Super Aguris. Spun it at the spoon curve. Yeah, let's not forget Monza, where it was Alonso who had an engine failure, and Schumacher picked up the 10 points, and that brought Schumacher right into it. At one point in this season, Alonso enjoying a 25-point lead after the Canadian Grand Prix over Schumacher. He's managed to close it down, and it really was that Monza turnaround that helped him on his way. Well, here today, it's gone very much the other way. Just 2 laps to go then for the reigning world champion to take a big step closer to making it 2 in a row. Not too many have achieved that, have they, over the years? Not too many drivers have won back-to-back world championships. Jack Brabham did it, Fangio did it. Obviously, Mika Hakkinen did it in the late 90s, and Schumacher's done it. But it's a pretty difficult thing to do.
Pretty much status quo out of there now. Ralf Schumacher tucked up behind his teammate for 6th and 7th. Heidfeld and Kubica in close company. That's the only really close action out there. Alonso, 15.6 seconds clear. He can turn the motor down. This is the 2nd race for that engine anyway, so he'll have a fresh one for Brazil. And as you said, James, all he'll need is 1 World Championship point there, top 8 finish, and the championship will be his. Running against the end of this one. Long faces at Ferrari. They're losing points today in the driver's title and the manufacturer's title. And, well, Alonso's not cruising too much, but he has just dropped it back to the 95-second mark.
If ever there was an example in life of don't give up, it's this race. I mean, this morning, walking around the paddock after what happened yesterday in qualifying, where Bridgestone and Ferrari had pulverised everybody else, nobody would have given a prayer for an outcome like this, and yet it just shows you, in life, in sport, in general, you never, ever give up until the last possible moment. That is the story of Fernando Alonso. It has been, for many years, the story of Michael Schumacher. He certainly will go to Brazil hell-bent on winning that Grand Prix and hoping that something happens to Alonso to swing the title his way. It's 2 fantastic, great drivers who've given us a wonderful, wonderful championship that is not over yet, but not quite. But it's certainly taken a big step closer to being over here this afternoon.
It's a pity in a way, isn't it? Michael first and Alonso second, 2 points between them going into that last race would have been a total cliffhanger, but As we said, it's still not definitely over. Fernando's got to keep his concentration, though. He has been very emotional recently, and as the pressure is built, Michael Schumacher coming back at him, and fair to score somewhat of an own goal by accusing his team of not wanting him to win the title because he's moving to McLaren. I have to say, I think, because that was announced over a year ago, I have to say, I think Renault have gone beyond the call of duty in the support they've given Alonso, but let's face it, he's the man in the team getting the job done. He's 24 seconds ahead of Fisichella.
I'm not sure he actually really said that. He definitely said they've not given him much support, but he's claiming he never said that they didn't actively want him to win the World Championship. That was a fabrication of the Spanish media, according to Alonso. Well, either way, he's coming through here to record the 15th victory of his Formula One career, and such an important one, the 7th of this 2006 World Championship, and one that moves him within an ace of winning the world title for the 2nd year in a row. Fernando Alonso wins in Japan the 20th anniversary victory, the 20th anniversary of Formula One here in Suzuka, and for the last time for a while before we come back here, hopefully at some point in the future. The only Ferrari to finish today, and the 17th podium of the season for the Ferrari team goes to Felipe Massa, and a very dejected Jean Todt there, the team boss. And Fisichella makes it 18 podiums for the year for the Renault team. He had a quiet afternoon, 23 seconds behind his teammate. Jenson Button finishes in 4th place, with Kimi Raikkonen there coming through in 5th for McLaren. And they're the two Toyotas, strong at the start, not so strong at the finish, but still a double points finish for them. And well, the rest of them will come through. Heidfeld and Kubica still battling over that final World Championship point on the last lap. And amazingly, Pedro de la Rosa, an enormous margin, a minute behind, more than a minute behind teammate Raikkonen at the end of that Grand Prix.
Everybody else's lap. Heidfeld takes the point with 8th, Kubica 9th. Everybody else from Rosberg in 10th back have been lapped and cannot complete the final lap of the Grand Prix.
Well, it's been a wonderful race in what's been a wonderful season. And who is your driver of the day this afternoon?
I think that's pretty easy, isn't it, Alonso? I thought he was extraordinary at the beginning of the race. Just as you said, never gave up. Put in that spurt so he could get himself past Massa, broke Massa's spirit, and Michael Schumacher's engine broke quite timely for Alonso too. Well, I don't know why the Ferraris didn't have the pace we all expected. If we watched them in free practice, their longer runs, they just looked like they were going to mesmerise everybody and go and run and hide. But Jean Todt on the grid to Ted wouldn't concede this one was in the bag, would he? And, well, how right he was. Jenson Button drove a good race. P4, he's been very solid, hasn't he, in the second half of this season. Raikkonen did a great job to get his McLaren up into 5th place. And, well, I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch in a Ferrari next year as well. I mean, there's some great young kids coming along, and Michael Schumacher might be going, but we've got Alonso and Raikkonen and co to fill in the space.
Takuma Sato finishes in 15th place, ahead of a spiker of Montero. Well, I was saying before, the motto of Alonso and Renault, clearly never give up, and Pat Simmons, the strategist down there at the Renault team, is talking now with Ted Kravitz.
Well, Pat, after your engine failure in Monza, do you feel that's just somehow?
I don't know about just, but it just shows, doesn't it? You know, I think last Saturday night, Ferrari must have been wondering how they were going to win, and they did it. And last night we were wondering. But that's the great thing about this season. You know, it really is going to the end. You can't predict the results. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the guy said in commentary, you never give up. But, I mean, if Michael hadn't blown up, you would have had this one lost. But it turns on its head, and you've got to say you're looking favourite for the championship.
Yeah, I guess statistically we are. And as you say, it just turns around so quickly. But the car was good today, and the tyres were good. We weren't quite the match for the Ferrari, but, you know, Fernando in front of Massa, we were close.
Okay, well done, Pat.
Yeah, the track temperature a little bit lower today than it was yesterday. That will have played a part in it. The Bridgestone tyre on the Ferrari and the Toyota didn't really stand out the way it did yesterday in qualifying. It was pretty even. Interesting to hear Pat Simmons there thinking that perhaps Ferrari were slightly faster today. At times, Alonso was able to close down on Michael Schumacher, but it never really got to less than 4.5 seconds before Schumacher's engine failure. Into the pit lane then, celebrating his 7th win of the year, Fernando Alonso. Absolutely tremendous performance here. And a great recovery from the Renault team. As Pat Simmons was just saying there, in China they were so sure they were going to win and Ferrari was so sure they were going to lose, and it turned out the opposite. And here again we've had a similar reversal.
It's the first victory since Canada in June for Fernando Alonso. No idea.
Means a lot to him. He's not quite as ecstatic as Schumacher was in China for that incredible turnaround, but I imagine that he's going to be saying that it's been such a significant day for him. There's his crew, #1 mechanic Chris, showing in the magazine that showed this morning Alonso down and out after qualifying. They've turned it around here. Renault, look at that, 9 points clear now in the Constructors' Championship. 2 podiums here for Renault, just the 1 for Ferrari. And that's given them a healthy lead there as well. But there is some business to be done in Brazil for Massa and Schumacher to try and win the Constructors' Championship for Ferrari.
Petra Schlöning there, the lady who does all the admin for Mercedes-Benz, will be supplying all of Fernando Alonso's free Mercedes-Benz around the world next year. Give him a hug. He's kind of got his foot already on the bridge over to McLaren by the looks of it. But has he got the job done for Renault? You have to hand it to Renault and Flavio Briatore. They don't spend as much as some of the teams, and they do seem to make it go just a little bit further.
That win for Alonso, the 15th of his career, as I was saying, he's now just 1 behind the great Sterling Moss and 5 behind Mika Häkkinen in the all-time winners list. He is at 13th on his own in the all-time winners list, but still only 25 years old. So how much more is he going to achieve? There's Taku.
He was very, very happy to cross the line, stopped in front of his mechanic. You'd think he got a podium there, but I think it's the equivalent. They've had a 15th place finish, got to the end of the Japanese Grand Prix, and that's a sad-looking Ferrari of Michael Schumacher has been pushed back out of the safety zone onto the side of the track, waiting for a random truck to come and pick it up. Michael, then, I've been out there. It's so hard to get back from. There's no, because it's an old-style circuit. There's no inner or outer perimeter road, and we saw Michael sort of trying to get out of a locked gate. Anyway, he eventually made it back. I thought it was very sporting of Michael to get out onto the pit wall and still, you know, you win together, you lose together, and Michael has always been incredibly good at building that team spirit.
Well, this podium has hosted world champions in the past. We've seen Häkkinen celebrating up here, famously, of course, Damon Hill as well. This is not a championship celebration yet, but it's a celebration of moving a big step closer. He can still lose it in Brazil, though.
Very happy-looking Fernando Alonso, and unhappy-looking Giancarlo Fisichella. I'm really not sure why. He's so emotional up on the podium. Alonso must be the photographer's dream in Formula One. He's got different facial hair every day. Every day. Yes, the pictures are out of date. You have to buy a new one. What a great victory for Fernando Alonso.
Well, he's ticked a few off this year. First win at Monaco, first win at Silverstone, and a first win here in Suzuka, the driver's circuit, really. And Renault picking up the Constructors' Cup as well. I think it's one of the engine builders, a little coded message there, perhaps possibly on the day that a Ferrari engine failed from Renault. Massa, the pole sitter yesterday, did his job, but simply wasn't quick enough today.
Critical, though, when he had to back off to let Michael through. That was enough time to, on the first pit stop, to get Alonso in front of him, and it kind of broke his spirit. So he had to yield to Michael. Maybe they should have gone a little bit further on that. Fisichella with a third place.
Well, tears from Fisichella on the podium. Not quite sure what that was about. Maybe someone close to him has died recently. I don't know, but clearly he's very emotional. And Fernando Alonso celebrates. Well, I said at the start that top-class sport can always provide shocks, and we've seen today a huge shock. A Ferrari engine failure has meant that Fernando Alonso is 10 points clear of Michael Schumacher, and he's now just one step from heaven.